This is Free Speech. We're live, and it's the only show where you can express your opinions on the issues you care about right now on BBC Three.
How can I compete? I still can't get work.
You make your own luck in this world.
You can't lose an entire generation.
Lots of fans, people are interested.
You've got people spitting about being statistics.
It's businesses that are the lifeblood of the economy.
Oh my God!
There is a lot going on. This is Free Speech. Welcome. I'm Rick Edwards, and tonight we're at Goldsmiths, University of London. We're going to be hearing what this lot have to say and what you've got to say too. Just tell Tina Dahealy.
Yes. Very good evening to you. Thank you, Rick. I am here to listen to your opinions and bring them to the heart of our discussion live right here in the studio. So, get your laptops, tablets and phones ready. Get online now with the BBC, Facebook or Twitter. Here are the addresses you need. One really easy way to be part of the debate is via the power bar, which should have popped up behind me. There it is. It responds in real time to what you think of the panel's points of view, and it operates via Twitter. So just use hashtag yes or hashtag no, followed by the first name of a panellist each time you agree or disagree with them.
And here is our panel, whose first job in just one sentence is to tell us who they are and what they're doing here. Let's start with you, please, Raheem.
My name's Raheem Kassam. I'm the executive editor of the Commentator.com, and I guess I'm here because I'm tired of politicians telling us what to do.
Okay. David.
My name's David Lammy, and I'm the MP for Tottenham, and I'm here because I think young people in Britain are getting a raw deal.
Charlotte.
I'm Charlotte Leslie. I'm the MP for Bristol North West, and I'm here because I think if you want to change things in life, you need to get in and get involved.
And Sarah.
Hello, my name's Sara Pascoe. I'm a comedian and an actor, and I am here to learn more about what you guys think about stuff.
That is our panel. OK, let's get started. We are talking about Rent Britain, and here in London, rents are increasing 8 times faster than wages, and young people can expect to live at home until they're 43 before they can afford to buy. What have been your experiences of renting in London, guys? Yes?
Renting in London is ridiculous. It's ridiculously high. And for me, I think I have to go outside of London in order to get a nice house. And even the quality of the house in London is ridiculously shabby.
You feel like you're going to have to leave? Yeah. Anyone else struggle with rent? Yes, you, sir.
I think it's not feasible to actually own or rent your own property. I'm still living with my own family, and it's very, in terms of rent, you know, it's very high nowadays for young people to try and go and rent or purchase a property.
Yeah.
I've lived on my own since 15, and obviously I'm 27 now, and I've only previously just moved to London, and it's literally extortionate for a room, let alone like trying to get my own house or anything.
Too much? Yes?
I also feel like I also rent in London, and I had literally no idea where to go, how to find a house, whether I was getting a good deal or a bad deal, and the fact that I have a roof over my head now is somewhat a miracle. So that's why I had it.
OK. Gentleman at the back here.
Yeah, I live in Brighton, and I still find it hard to find a place to live. I mean, I think it's the commuter prices. Obviously, people in London can't afford to live in London, so they'll commute to other nearby cities or towns and buy up places there and then use those to house the people that can't be housed in London. So I'm finding it hard myself, even in living in Brighton.
Louise, what's your experience been? I mean, I recognise you from TV. I think you'd be OK.
Well, you'd think that, but I think one of the things that's really important to think about is, I think we've all established that most of us are going to be renting till we're in our mid-40s anyway, unless you've got really rich parents. But something that really needs to be addressed is the paperwork and the red tape that self-employed people have to go through. One, I think most of us accept that most people now are self-employed, setting up on their own because of the economic climate. And I've moved this year, and I had to go through exactly the same checks and paperwork and stress just to rent a property that my friends have done who've bought. Obviously, if I had my own property to rent out, I would want it protected. I would want to make sure the person living in my flat was going to look after it. But to to be honest, felt like a criminal. I've never felt more guilty in the 6 weeks that these checks were being performed on me. Like, I was literally saying...
And you're not a criminal, are you?
I promise I'm not a criminal. I'm like, here's my DNA. What more do you want from me? I just want to rent a property.
The housing charity Shelter say that their phone calls are up 40% in the last year, dealing with people who are struggling with housing. Who else has had rent problems? Yes?
I think it's mainly a lot of young people have to rent via Gumtree, and the biggest problem I've faced is landlords giving me a so-called legal rent and then turning up 3 days later, 3 weeks later and saying, oh, I want it for my brother, I want it for my sister. You go to the police and the paperwork's just not valid, and when you ask them they say, well, it's Gumtree, you know, we're not here to regulate it, you know, you want a house, that's where you go. And I think that's just criminal for a lot of young people who are never going to see housing and never own the house of their own.
Lady here?
I think you're stigmatised to a certain extent because you have to fit into a certain category in order to rent. Because I've tried to rent as a student, and I found it very hard because as a student that doesn't come under the criteria of having a full-time job where you look stable. So even though you do have the means to pay for it, because you don't look like the right person on paper, even if you do have the money, then you're looked at a certain way as a student, that you're not going to be like look after the property.
It's very interesting. When we posted about this on Facebook and Twitter, we got a huge response, and we've spoken to Kat and Dean, Kat is over there, who have very different experiences of how they've coped with the housing market.
I'm Dean, I'm an apprentice multi-trader. Working in building trade definitely makes me think more about houses. I live in a three-bedroom flat with my mum at the moment. I want to get onto the housing ladder because I want to have some stability when I'm older.
My name's Kat. I've been squatting for about 4 years. This is the 12th property I've lived in, and I'm a poet. Most of the buildings that people squat in are long-term empty buildings. I found renting unaffordable and really isolating, and some of my friends were squatting, so I decided to go and live with them because I didn't know when my job was going to be finished and if I'd be able to pay the rent.
I think the house prices in London are way too high for people of my age. It makes me feel like I'll never be able to get on the housing ladder with the money that I earn unless I had help from somebody else. When you're renting, the landlord can kick you out whenever they like. I'm planning to buy the property with my mum that we live in at the moment. I pay back the rent to her, and then we both have a share in the house.
I get to live in places that I wouldn't otherwise get to live in. There's around about 15 to 20 people who live here. It can be very stressful at times. It's definitely not for everybody, but it's better than trying to find £600 a month. If whoever owns the property is not in a position to use it, then they should pass it over to the government to be used for social housing.
I think that would bring down the prices for everybody else.
I was just thinking your squat looked quite nice until I saw that sort of black rubber udder.
Yeah, we didn't have any water at the time.
Very clearly. Very clearly.
Yeah, we had to go collect the water.
Well, good luck to you. You've got a question that our social media audience have selected. What is it?
They've asked, if you can't afford to live in London, should you move out?
OK, let's go down to our panel. I'm going to start with you, Raheem. Should people move out of London if they can't afford to live there? And you're going to have 30 seconds, and I am going to time it, Raheem. Go.
I've lived in London all my life, but I don't figure that it's a right that I get to live in London. If my financial situation continues the way it is, I'll have to think of moving further out or outside London. When I graduated, well, after my parents kicked me out, I moved down the road here to Mossingham, and I got a really cheap sort of box room.
10 seconds.
I just don't believe that we should be all looking to cram ourselves in London. We've got some wonderful cities in this country, and employers are putting jobs there, and we should all be looking elsewhere in this country.
Stop. Very good. Time-wise, Raheem. Very good. David.
I think quite a lot of young people have to live in London because this is where the jobs are. The point is, there's no choice. So the point is that we've got to have fair rents because people are renting houses that are actually quite horrible, flats that are horrible, and they're paying way over the odds. So we need some kind of rent control or fair rents like they've got in Germany. I think we've got to build more houses. Government haven't done that. We've got to regulate landlords, and we've got to regulate letting agents who are charging extortionate fees for just turning up.
So, is regulation something that would help? Is rent control something that would help, do you think? Yes, got it back here.
It's a good idea, but I mean, how would you go about regulating or legislating it? How much money would that cost in just regulating, getting the jobs? I mean, it might create jobs, having people actually do this, but the thing is how much money would it cost to regulate? I mean, I would like to see it done, because then, you know, I could afford to get a place of my own, perhaps, but I don't think it would be cost-effective.
OK. Yes, gentleman here.
I'm on an apprenticeship in an estate agency myself, and if we could all agree that renting a property is a business, it's about making money, and as we've all said, houses in London are highly sought after. So if the demand's increasing, the price for them surely got to increase as well.
Makes sense. Yes, let's speak to Kat.
I believe that housing is a human right. It's about homes, not about property, and that everyone has the right to decent housing.
If you agree or disagree with anything that you're hearing or that's just been said, do let Tina know. Tina, what are they saying online at the moment?
Yeah, please do get in touch. It's all kicking off at the moment. Loads of messages coming in live. James, you would probably get on with Raheem, who says, stop whinging about rent. If you can't afford it, don't live there. It's not that hard. The state can't solve all problems. And this one from SB26 disagrees. What if you can't afford to not live in London? Discrimination on income grounds. How do you respond to that?
Charlotte, how do you respond to that? Is it discrimination on income grounds?
But basically, there's a big problem, isn't there? We haven't got enough housing, and if we did have enough housing, then the prices wouldn't be so high. And I mean, you know, what David said, building enough houses is a problem that subsequent governments have had issues with, and I think, you know, we're doing really well, but it is tricky, and we're loosening up planning regulations so we can build more of it.
You're not doing well.
Well, it's a massive problem. I think regulation, in the short term, sounds really nice, but actually, if you have a load of politicians fixing prices, I'm not quite sure that's the way to go. And I think helping first-time buyers onto the housing market is good. But, I mean, I think we've all had experiences of horrible rental and living in shoeboxes in London, and it's really grim. But one thing I think our parents' generation had it very good, and we're suffering because of a baby boomer generation. It's not anyone's personal fault, but a baby boomer generation who've really sapped up all the property, and we're having to deal with that.
Sarah, how do you feel about housing in London?
Do you know what? Well, so basically, I'll just tell you about me, but so I grew up in Essex, which is very close to London, so it's a slightly cheaper place. I moved out at 18, I lived in Leytonstone with 10 other people, and then I went to university, I lived in halls, and I lived for 5 years with my best friend and her mum for £50 a week, but I'd never really questioned whether that was right. That's just what I had to do. I wanted to be an actor, I had to be in London. And now I used to live in Streatham, and I live in Tooting, two fantastic areas that are, for London, really cheap, if you don't mind being on the overground, and Tooting's really up and coming, so I feel like you can find... I don't think I overpay. I rent, but I don't think I overpay on my rent for what I've got in terms of London. But again, I don't question because it's London that I deserve any more than that. I'm grateful to be here. And also, housing outside of the city. If you suddenly said to me it will be half the rent, but you can be in Nottingham, I wouldn't go. I'd rather pay more and be here. This is where I want to be. This is where I've grown up. And it's about maybe the creative ways that we work out what are we going to do about that, because you can't just magically create houses, but at the same time some people don't want to live with strangers. Some people, and definitely houses have to be not have mice and have running water, and it's horrible actually when people are suffering because of the place that they're living in.
Yeah, you say you can't magically create houses, you build them. They can be built. We've heard from all of our panellists now. It's time for the power bar, Tina.
Yes, time to hand over power to the people at home. Instant judgment time for you lot in real time. Are you ready? Let's fire up the power bar. Okay. And David, you are in the lead so far, but don't get too comfortable. It's only early. And Raheem, not far behind. Charlotte, you've got some ground to make up.
It can all change. Where's Lizzie? Lizzie, how would you approach this housing problem?
Well, I work for the National Housing Federation, and our research shows that the average house price in London is over 15 times the average salary of a Londoner. So that's why a lot of people are really, really struggling, giving up the hope of ever being able to buy their own home here. And fundamentally, this is an issue of lack of supply. We're not building enough homes. We haven't been for many, many years. And so until we sort that out, prices are going to continue to go up. We really need to get building in London.
OK, who else thinks we need to get building in London, then? Where's Rob? Rob?
Well, I think this is an argument for uncontrolled mass immigration. We should be looking after British youths. As you said, there's a shortage of houses, especially in London. It's about supply and demand. We have a big demand at the moment, and in January we can argue all day about this, but it could get bigger. There's a potential for it to get a lot bigger. We need to ensure the supply is there for the British youths before we open the borders to Eastern Europeans.
Okay. I felt like that boom might be coming. Josh, how would you respond to that?
I think it's definitely true. From a Lib Dem perspective, we do need to build more social housing, and if you actually look at local authorities, Lib Dems actually have a much better record than the Tories and Labour on building social housing. The percentage of the housing stock goes up under Lib Dem councils, but also we need to look at other ways to make sure that low earners can access this housing, because the rent can be very high, and that's why I really do welcome the fact that Lib Dem policy like lowering income tax for basic rate payers, ensuring that over 20 million people are getting £700 tax cut, and lifting the lowest earners out of income tax altogether, allowing them to keep the money that they've worked really hard to earn. I think little things like that can help people in a situation where they may not necessarily be able to afford the high rents in London.
Okay.
Rick, a really good point that's come here. Hang on. I'm speaking up for people at home. Chris says, I will be moving to London in September for uni. Over half my money will be going on my room. It's ridiculous. Now, just to put that in context, financial experts say your accommodation cost should be about 30 to 35% of your income. That's well over 50%.
So who else feels like they're spending over 50% of their income on rent at the moment? Yeah, this lady here.
Yeah, I definitely feel I am. As a student, I'm paying a lot more for my rent in comparison. It's over 30% of what I'm getting. And I think in terms of students, especially because the government knows how much we're entitled to and how much we're getting, our rent should be a lot cheaper, because we have to contribute our rent along with all our everyday costs, our living costs and our studying costs. And that isn't reflected at all.
Okay. Yes, just go ahead.
I'd just like to talk about the same thing Chris raised at home. I moved here for my first year as a student in London, and at Central London Universities, the halls costs are ridiculous. The lowest for mine is £180 a week. I'm fortunate that I managed to be able to get a job and cover some of that, but a lot of people are finding that very difficult to move to London and pay so much for rent, and that puts people off some of the best institutions in the entire country.
Okay. Go at the back there with a hand.
Maybe the answer, if we can't regulate housing, maybe the answer is to raise the rent in London. Sorry, raise the wage in London.
That can't be the answer. Oh, sorry, you're saying raise
the wage in London, yeah.
But just in London, OK. Yes, this gentleman here.
I think we've seen a really worrying demographic shift in London, and it seems that poor people are being priced out, and it seems to be that it's like a very class-based city, and it's only for basically Conservative voters. And I think the Conservative Party are only too willing to cut housing benefit to make this really happen, because there's so many constituencies in London. So, David Lammy, you're a Labour MP. I'd be worried about what the Conservatives are doing. You really got to fight against it and help poor people in this country.
Are you worried, David?
Well, I spent most of the last week speaking out against the housing benefit cap, because, in a sense, people are receiving that housing benefit because of high rents. The money's actually going to landlords. And the fair rents that I argued for are actually happening in Germany, where rents are linked to inflation, index-related, and where there are much longer tenancies. At the moment, your landlord can come and take your rent up every 2 months. In Germany, people have 5-year tenancies, so they know they can plan over a year, 2, 3, 4, 5. They know how much the rent is going up. That's the system we need over here.
There's an interesting statistic that 1/4 of housing benefit claimants are in employment. Tina, what are the messages that are coming
James is making this point. This has just come in. We definitely need to build more houses. How about some new towns in the London commuter area? And this person, whose name I'm not quite sure.
Hibani Glamour.
Yeah, there you go. Question mark. Building more houses would create more jobs and homes, but potential future problems. So they agree. And FV1 says public transport is also a key issue in the housing debate. Moving outside of London, good point, means paying large amounts on travel. Now, if you want your point of view read out, you've got to make it first. Please get in touch. Head to facebook.com/BBC Free Speech. For Twitter, it is @BBC Free Speech, or use hashtag Free Speech, or go to bbc.co.uk/free speech.
Now we're going to move on to the thorny issue of the minimum wage. Business Secretary Vince Cable has announced it's going up good news it seems, but how good? Anyone here that works or has worked for minimum wage, out of interest? Few of you have. Do you know how much it's going to go up in October? Not enough is maybe right. It's 12 pence for over 21s, 3 pence if you're an apprentice. So I think Yvonne has a question. Where's Yvonne? There's Yvonne. You've got a question about this.
My question is, why can't minimum wage be abolished altogether? We should be paid according to service.
I'll go to David first, and I'm going to do the 30 seconds on the clock for you, so 30 seconds to respond to that, please.
The Labour Party fought hard to get a national minimum wage. People were being exploited and ripped off, paid 50p, £1 an hour before that. We should defend it. We now need to move on to having a living wage. This is not the time.
10 seconds.
This is not the time to go backwards. And frankly, those that think that somehow this has been inflationary or caused problems are wrong. The national minimum wage is being copied around the world.
And stop. Thank you, David. Raheem, do you agree with David?
No, I fundamentally disagree. Firstly, I don't care what the Labour Party fought for. I don't care what any political party fought for. I think this is an issue about people. The minimum wage is not. It's a false economy, is what it is, because what it does is it pushes up pricing and it makes employers cut the number of people that they can employ. When I was working in a retail store, when I was at university, they raised the minimum wage. What did my employer do? He cut half the staff in the shop and the prices went up. The punters coming in couldn't afford the products anymore and the business had to slash even further. It does not make sense to have a minimum wage, and it's discriminatory. It tells you that you cannot decide for yourself what your services are worth. This is you, this is your labour. You decide what it's worth and you go out there and market yourself. And a government telling you what to do is so patronising.
Sorry, you can respond to that, David.
He's basically arguing to go back to the 18th century when working class people were exploited in this country. That's
Two extremely opposing views there. Is that getting people going online?
It is. Paul, it says abolished. All it's done is push prices up for everyone, affecting the poor more. So, Raheem, you've won this one over David with Paul.
OK. Sarah?
Yeah.
What do you think about the minimum
wage? Do you know what?
wage?
I actually find discussing it really scary, because I think that it is the vulnerable people, yet again, that would suffer at this. I've worked for minimum wage, and I think actually the only thing I do think that could happen is that if there was a sliding scale within businesses, so some people's minimum wage, if you're a very successful nightclub, your minimum wage would be less there than a country pub where you've got 2 members of staff and you serve 6 people all evening, but it doesn't go any lower than it is now. Because actually all that happens is that really vulnerable people, the people that clean, the people that au pair, the people that work in bars, are going to end up working 14, 15-hour shifts to make the same money that is disgraceful now. I find it even discussing it really worrying.
Okay. Yes, this gentleman here.
David Lammy talked about exploitation. Actually, bankers exploited all of us in the last few years. So really, if anything, we should have a national maximum wage, in my opinion.
National maximum wage is interesting. This gentleman here.
Hello. Living wage has been introduced in the City Council of Leicester. However, my opinion about the minimum wage should be kept, but then there ought to be a balance so that people don't get fired from their jobs. There's a possibility of being a balance between jobs, taxes, housing benefit. Pretty much everything should be a balance so that you move forward, the business can grow, but then economic is more, hopefully, stable.
Is it possible to maintain that balance, do you think, Charlotte?
Yeah, do you know what? I think the word in this is balance. Of course, when I was working on a minimum wage and I was mopping up pub floors, if someone had said to me, do you want to rise in the minimum wage? I said, oh, yes, please. But the point is, if someone had said, right, that means probably your job's going to go, then I'd have said, no, thank you. And it's always a balance. You've got, on the one hand, I think you do have to protect people because there's some ruthless employers out there. But on the other hand, you don't want a living wage that is so high that people have to let people go. So I think it's a balance. And, you know, sometimes it's a really difficult one. But I think raising it, inflation's rising, living standards are getting higher. So I think raising it cautiously is probably the right thing to do.
OK. Yes, this gentleman here in the crew jumper.
David Lammy, you like to talk about discrimination, yet the very people who are on unpaid internships are being discriminated by no money as a result of the minimum wage, where we don't even pay them anything for working. If there was no minimum wage, those people could be employed at the level which their skills and experience is worth, which might be below the minimum wage, but at the moment they're getting nothing.
David?
I think there is an issue with internships, but I think it depends on, there's a difference between probably a 15 or 16-year-old spending a couple of weeks working, an 18-year-old, someone who's at university doing a sabbatical year, so you've got to look in quite a lot of detail at what the internship is and whether it's work experience, voluntary, or actually a job. But yes, graduates should be paid for a job of work, and it's unfair if they're not being paid for a job of work.
So the reason this happens, and it's because I'm asking so I don't understand, so our internships, if you're not paid, is that because they're seen as education, not work, even though you are doing a job?
They can be voluntary, they can be educational, it's such a grey area.
And presumably, and there's no guarantee after you've worked for free that you get that job?
No.
Okay, it's like acting.
No. Where's Shadiq? Hello. So, you're the youngest member of the Corporation of London. What's your feeling about minimum wages?
I think abolishing minimum wage would lead to exploitation, but I think the whole argument here is finding a balance between the two. But in order to find the balance, I think we need to discuss the main issue here, which is getting our young people back into employment in the first place in order to pay them a wage.
Is there anyone here who feels that the minimum wage actually has no particular effect? Yes.
Obviously it has effect on people, but I believe that when you go to work, the way the minimum wage sort of restricts people and put you in a category in house. Nurses, for instance, get paid ridiculously less than the banking elites and the people who control our country, and how the workers have to pay for people like David Cameron's rent and your rent, sir. And the money comes, it just seems it's twisted, and the way the capitalist system, how it's working, it means a lot of people, even in a rich country like Britain, are living in poverty and can't eat and can't afford to survive. And something's going incredibly wrong here, and people are going to the storehouse and not being able to eat, and the Queen's got £27 trillion, she's Queen of England, and there's people starving, on the streets.
That's an unconfirmed figure on the Queen, I think. Yes, gentleman in the blue jumper.
Well, I think essentially that all the sort of increases in minimum wage that you've mentioned are in fact just lip service. Like if you're only upping it by 13p, that doesn't address the issue of the fact that the majority of the jobs that are available at that kind of level at minimum wage are quite temporary. So it doesn't matter if you're only adding 13 pence extra an hour to someone who's only able to get, say, 20 hours a week. They're not getting a good 9-to-5 job from this. This is affecting the people who really are struggling to find whatever work there is.
Okay. Yes, gentleman here in the orange T-shirt.
The question was, should minimum wage be abolished? When I was 17, I had 2 job offers. One offered me to pay me the minimum wage was £6.19, and another one offered me to pay £3.45. So it was quite obvious which one I was going to go for. So I went for the £6.19. That £6.19 an hour, that £6.19 an hour makes a big difference. So by abolishing it, you allow employers to give ridiculous amount, like £3, £2, 50 pence even an hour. So I think it's a good idea to keep as it is.
So who feels like you're going to get taken advantage of if you abolish the minimum wage then?
So I just feel that if you're going to do the same job as someone that's older than you, but you get paid a different amount to them, you're doing the same job, so why should you get paid less than them?
You think don't value experience in that respect?
Yeah, no. If you're the same, you shouldn't do it depending on age. It should be the same age. All ages you get paid the same amount.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and I agree because I believe as a younger person you're a lot fitter, you've got more energy, you're a lot more able to do more things. So it's unfair to pay a young person less and to pay an older person more when they're least likely to be as proactive.
Okay. Yes, this lady here.
I think that the minimum wage is definitely necessary. I think it brings an element of equality, at least, so that at least nobody will get exploited. And I think that the government are just too corrupt. I think they need to bring some kindness and bring some support to young people here who are struggling. The rate of inflation, the cost of living is going up incredibly high. But salaries and incomes are going up so slowly that people are struggling. People are going to turn to crime, and then they're going to moan again when the next riots happen. People are hungry. People are hurting and they're desperate.
Tina, are the people online echoing what we're hearing
Yeah,
in the
pretty
studio?
much. A lot of what we're hearing in the audience. Sonny says, I disagree with the minimum wage being abolished. Without it, we would be exploited and will be making living standards even worse. Lots of people using the word exploitation. Clayton says, minimum wage is here for a reason. If you do better, you earn more. If not, you get just what you need. That's fair. And then this one says, we need a maximum wage. Good time to get a power bar update to see if anything has changed. David, you are still in the lead. Raheem, you've slipped back a bit, probably because of your comments about abolishing the minimum wage.
Stand by them.
And the power bar is operating in real time, don't forget. You can influence it too. Get on Twitter right now and tell our panellists what you think of them. Use hashtag yes or hashtag no, followed by their first name. So, if you agree with Raheem, it's hashtag yes Raheem or hashtag no Raheem. For David, it's hashtag yes David or hashtag no David. For Charlotte, it's hashtag yes Charlotte or hashtag no Charlotte. And for Sarah, it's hashtag yes Sarah. If you disagree, it's hashtag no Sarah. Make your voice heard on free speech. Tweet the power bar.
Next up, tuition fees and debt are a huge issue for many of you who watch Free Speech. Projected figures for 2013 show that 19% of graduates will be unemployed and 36% will be in low-skilled jobs. This is what Suli Breaks has to say.
So you want to get a degree. Why? Let me tell you what society will tell you. It increases your chances of getting a job, provides you with an opportunity to be successful. Your life will be a lot less stressful. Education is the key. Now let me tell you what your parents will tell you. Make me proud. It increases your chances of getting a job, provides you with an opportunity to be successful. Your life will be a lot less stressful. Education is the key. Now let's look at the statistics. Steve Jobs, net worth, 7 billion, RIP. Richard Branson, net worth, 4.2 billion. Oprah Winfrey, net worth, 2.7 billion. Mark Zuckerberg, Henry Ford, Steven Spielberg, Bill Gates. Now here comes the coup de grace. Looking at these individuals, what's your conclusion? Neither of them, in being successful, ever graduated from a higher learning institution.
Interesting stuff from Suli Breaks. Cherry, you've got a question. Where's Cherry? Cherry, yes.
Yeah, because of the increase in tuition fees and a shortage of graduate jobs, do you think it's better to go into apprenticeships?
OK. 30 seconds for you, Charlotte, starting now.
I think the sensible thing to do is to go into a degree or an apprenticeship if it's the right thing for you. I think we've been really dishonest with young people about what their degree is going to lead them to. And I speak to a lot of employers say they've got a great paperwork degree talking about it, but they can't actually do it. And they'd have been better off doing the real thing and not writing about it. And I think doing an apprenticeship and doing the practical thing is just as good as doing an academic course about it. And when we get that right, then people get their futures right.
Perfect time. David, what do you think about apprenticeships and their value?
Look, I think that there's a lot of hype about apprenticeships, but you've got to look behind it. You know, the vast majority of apprenticeships are in retail and admin. They're not actually in quality professions and technical skills that people want. I worked at McDonald's. I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, but please don't call that an apprenticeship. You know, young people know what a real apprenticeship is, and it gives you a proper income, a proper job, like they have in Germany. So there's a lot of changes that need to be made to apprenticeships. The vast majority of the increase in apprenticeships is over 35s. It's not actually young people doing those jobs. The work programme isn't working, the youth contract isn't working, young people in this country are unemployed. The hype about apprenticeships is literally spin. Of course university is worth it, but you have to look closely at the university and the course. That is the truth. And for some people, £9,000 for some of those courses is not worth it.
Yes, you sir.
As a disabled person, I find that even though I've got the academic criteria to go to the best university in London, I feel that my disability has limited my access to those universities because the fundings and the loans that I get from universities are simply not enough, and I'm having to go to other sources and sort of beg them, plead them for money just so I can go to those universities, just so I can access what I need to, and it's so much stress, and I don't think, and I've reached points where I thought it's not worth it, and I think it might be even better for me to go into an internship because it's just less stress-free, and I think it's, you know, there needs to be more access for disabled people to get into higher education.
Who else feels like actually the cost of university is so great and the guarantee of a job is not there, that they're not going to go? You, sir.
Yeah, I believe that it's crucial to actually go into higher education to maximise your chances of being successful. But when any political party promises to lower or keep the tuition fees low, but then they don't, who can we as a generation actually trust with our futures?
Okay. Who feels that actually university, you don't need it? Is there anyone here who's... Yes, yes.
To be honest, I think all the topics we're talking about, the main is on survival, and I think it's important that people, they should go to university and learn how to, not even go to university, but they should learn how to survive and grow their own food. There wouldn't be a problem if everyone was growing food in their own back garden. They could all eat because we all grow food, but that's not being advertised no more. You get McDonald's, MSG, that's just going to kill you. Sorry. But that's going to kill you, That all these big corporations are trying to poison us when really we should be growing our own food and trying to survive off our own backs. Organic...
they're not deliberately trying to poison us, I don't think. Yes, this lady here.
It's a research that could definitely are.
You're not trying to kill us. We'll talk about it afterwards. We're going to have a great chat afterwards. I'm going to go with this lady, please.
Don't have a Spartan. They're trying to kill us out there, I swear.
I do disagree highly with what the gentleman said over there, saying that education or higher education equals success. I think there's a big smokescreen, and we've been indoctrinated from young. It was like, for me personally, I come from a very academic background. I loved education and whatnot, and it was like the next thing. You had to do university. I never stopped to just assess my own life and see what career I want to do. And I really do, honestly, in hindsight, respect all the young students that have stepped out of college and really looked at their own life and thought, no, I don't really want to go to uni just yet. Let me just see what I want to do. And then, if they do want to go to university to become a doctor or whatnot, then yeah, all for it, go for it. However, exactly what Sunny said, real life skills to network or whatnot, or speak to people and communicate and learn from each other is something you can learn in your everyday life. You can go back to Africa and learn that. You don't need a letter to say, I've got a degree and I can succeed with it. Survive.
This gentleman, you mentioned you were doing an apprenticeship at an estate agent. Do you feel like you've missed out by not going to university?
Well, I just terminated a contract at a championship level football club, and by embarking on this apprenticeship, I've realised that I've started to do what all the employers who I went for interviews for were talking about, and that's called getting experience. Me personally, I feel that experience is far more valuable than any qualification, because it's proven that you can do the job well.
Okay. Yes.
I think what I found really worrying and quite sad about what everyone's saying tonight is that we're not talking about dreams or aspirations. Everyone's talking about survival. And whilst I don't really agree with this lovely lad here, it is about survival in that, we're not talking about in 10 years I want to be earning X or have my own business or own a property. It's how do I get through the next 6 months, whether it's property, minimum wage, or go into university. And, I just feel that this generation's been completely robbed.
Yes.
For me, I know, obviously I don't study the big things, but I did musical theatre, and for me it's about taking a gamble, and I didn't do I did college, but I didn't want to pay £9 to go to those kind of things. All you need is that one lucky break, and obviously I've had a few over a couple of years and stuff, but sometimes it's not about going into further education and doing that. It's right time, right place.
It's about what's right for you. I'd say it's about what's right for you, and I think that parents and I think schools need to give young people a dose of reality. This whole talk about if you get a degree you're going to get a good job, because you're not, it's not guaranteed. I don't have a degree, I didn't go to university, I'm the only person in my family who didn't, and employers have employed me because of my experience, and I've been working since I was 16, and I had my own business, I'm doing okay, work-wise. I'm in a senior position with no degree, and they're saying to me my experience is invaluable. That's the most valuable thing to an employer. They need to be realistic and let people know that a degree is not going to get you through that door. You need to do what's right for you. Don't be pressured by your parents or by peers to get a degree. You do what's right for you. You find yourself and do what's right for you. You don't need a degree.
Yes, sir, in the glasses.
I'd just like to say from the other side, I think it's become quite fashionable to bash degrees, and in actual fact, there are a lot of people that want to just go out and just carry on learning and just carry on educating themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with going to apprenticeship. But I don't know why it's such an issue, and everyone's suddenly up in arms about degrees. Just if you want to carry on learning, then why not?
Okay. Gentleman at the front here.
when Labour decided that 50% of young people have to go to university and set this as a target, it made everything else much less valuable. Yes, some degrees are very important. Doctors, you need that quality of education. But apprenticeship should be the main way. And it's even before university. Our secondary education system is completely flawed. Because it says you must be academic or you have failed. Technical schools and colleges are the way we need to focus. Because some people aren't academic, and that doesn't make them bad people.
Okay. Raheem?
I think the young man there took the words out of my mouth. I mean, I think a degree is not for everyone. I think it was incredibly damaging when the Tony Blair government said 50% of all youngsters should be going to universities. I went to university. I felt a hell of a lot of pressure to go to university from my parents, from the school, and I wasn't a particularly, the type of person who would be good at hitting the books. And I feel like I lost out in that time. I lost out on, because I've just started a company myself, trying to be self-employed, on how to file tax returns, on how to do company accounts, on things like going out and networking, learning these real-life, real-world skills. It wasn't for me, and I bet you it's not for a lot of people, and I just feel like we're trying to pressure so many people to go to university when either they don't want to, they're not cut out for it. In actuality, we'd do a lot better if we taught them, the skills to go out in the workplace and become the Richard Bransons of the world.
You went to university, Sarah. You went to university.
I did. I'm a terrible example to young people because basically I worked
I'm
for
glad
2
you're
years.
here.
I worked for 2 years. I had no money. I was working in Nottingham for £100 a week, and I was so far over my overdraft. The only way out of it was to get a student loan. So I went through clearing to Sussex University, and then I went with nothing. I didn't even have a duvet. I knew you had to take stuff with you. So that's the most money I'd ever had in my bank account. And then it was amazing. So I did an English degree, and I was the first generation of... I had a single-parent family from Romford and then Dagenham. I never thought I would earn over 20 grand in my life. Then they said, if you earn over 20 grand, you have to pay it back. I was like, yeah, whatever. And then they said, after 10 years, it goes away. I was like, brilliant. But I know it's a lot more now. I know it's a lot more now, but actually, do you know what? I now earn enough I only started paying off my student loan 2 years ago, but I do, and I'm proud of it. And that degree is no use whatsoever for any job unless you want to be an English teacher. And even then, actually, you don't need one. But it smashed my mind open. It made me a better person. It made me want to learn about things and be part of a community. And that's why I'm proud to pay for it.
Interesting perspective. Tina, what are people saying online?
Well, Andrew is referring to Sully, his point before. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Alan Sugar all succeeded because of their attitude. So it's not about education. Alex makes the point about apprenticeships, which we were talking about before. They're a rip-off. How can you expect young people to survive on £2 per hour? Pay them a minimum wage and bring in a living wage as well, so combining those two subjects. Damien says, go to university and read a degree if it makes you happy and it's what you want to do. No other reason to, so it's not even about your future prospects, it's about making you happy. Good time to have a look at the power bar to see if anything has changed. David, you are still in the lead, very popular at home with the online audience, but Sarah is very close behind you.
Oh yeah, David.
Sarah's sneaking up. Now, the FA announced this afternoon that Luis Suarez has received a 10-match ban for biting Branislav Ivanovic on the arm. It's a longer ban than he received for racially abusing Patrice Evra in 2011. Liverpool Football Club have until Friday to appeal. Adele has a question about this. Where's Adele? Hello, Adele, what do you want to ask?
When footballers are often considered role models, shouldn't they face the consequences when they misbehave?
OK. Sarah, you've got 30 seconds.
Great. OK, now, I have to warn you, my boyfriend says that I talk about football like a Daily Mail reader talks about immigration. Just repeating things that I've heard very passionately, but with absolutely no knowledge. OK, but my thing on this, I'm not bragging, but I've got an A-level in law. And so I think, so I read something like this in the papers, and it says, a man bit another man, they were both at work. I think that should be... People should be protected whether they're at work. I do stand-up. If someone heckles me, I'm not allowed to hit them. And then people complain about the amount of matches he's not doing. I'm like, he should go to prison.
OK.
Sorry, Liverpool FC.
OK, I don't think prison's on the cards. Raheem?
Yeah, I mean, I think 10 matches is a ridiculously short amount of time to ban this guy. He's got form. He's done the very same thing before. He was banned by the Dutch FA, I think, for 7 matches for doing the same thing. He's not exactly a great role model. The FA is a public body. It has a responsibility to make sure that this guy is a role model for young people. I don't want to see kids biting people in the playground after this, you know. I think what really should happen is this guy should be made to clean up the stadium after each of these 10 games that he's not allowed to play in, because he needs to learn that he cannot behave like an animal on the pitch and get away with it, and nothing so far. These bans, they don't make a damn cent to what he thinks about, and he needs to feel like this hits him in the pocket.
It should be given therapy. Like, if he was a bus driver and twice he'd bitten someone, once done a racist attack, you don't like your job, do you? You're not doing it very well.
I think
someone needs to help you.
He is going to go and do anger management classes, I believe. Derian, over here, you played football.
Yeah.
What's your take on the whole thing?
I think his passion that hasn't been controlled properly.
Okay.
It shows how much he wanted to win the game, and it was wrong. It was wrong to do, but at the end of the day, he's got to be punished like any human being would, respect whether he's a footballer or not.
Okay. Who agrees with that? Yeah.
I totally disagree. Joe, I just think that this whole debate is completely facile. Why are we talking? Why are we talking about this? It's totally inconsequential. Margaret Thatcher ruined millions of people's lives, and we're not talking about that.
We'll move on to that.
Ridiculous.
What we're talking about at the moment is Suarez. Yes, you at the back.
I think if you were in any other job, you'd get fired for biting someone. So it's not even about role models. It's just about you bit someone at work, fire him.
Okay. Yes.
I think the way the FA's dealt with it has been the worst part of giving a lower ban than for his racism. It shouldn't be say no to racism. It seems like they're saying say no to rabies.
Okay. It's catchy. Okay. Yes, this lady here.
It's because the FA know that they can get away with it. Obviously, the higher company you work and the more money you earn, it seems like there's less of a kind of fine or less regulated for what you can do. So if they know they can get away with just banning him from 10 matches, they're going to do that. Whereas if it was someone maybe not such a higher company or individual, then their consequences will be tough.
So, are we furious about this then because he earns so much money? Is that the thing?
I think, like the gentleman down there said, in a similar vein, we shouldn't really be talking about it.
Okay, well, we are.
I know. But
we are, so let's just move on.
No, but what my point is...
Stop saying that footballers are role models for young people. They're not. Footballers may be role models for young children until they're about 5 years old, and then at that point they stop. So actually we shouldn't expect that footballers have a moral obligation to behave themselves on the pitch because children are watching them. They're playing, in the heat of the moment they might bite someone, that's a little bit crazy, but actually, really, what he did and the punishment he got for it, we should be questioning why the Football Association take less of a stance on racism and more of a stance on someone biting. That's absolutely ludicrous.
Hand up there.
Is racism or biting, footballers are role models to young people. And if they are, even if they are as young as 5, and 5-year-olds will imitate behaviour, they will. If they 5-year-olds will. Children imitate behaviour more than you will believe. It is completely wrong to say that they won't.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Sorry, when you say about Luis Suarez, nurses get paid about, in 2 years, 120 grand. He gets that in a week, and he kicks the ball for 90 minutes, and they say save lives for 16 hours a day.
Yeah, okay. So you're cross about that. Charlotte, what do you make of it?
Yeah, look, he was at work, and all I know is if I bit David Cameron at work, you wouldn't have
Big
me
it!
sitting here. Well, if I do, I'll blame you not. Well, I think there's a point about people being beyond blame, and there's all sorts of... We've seen bankers, we've seen the head of the NHS, and they all seem to be beyond blame because they're big people, but also, yeah, he needs to face the consequences. But, you know, if you're going around biting someone, your life's not in a great way, is it? And being a big, high-profile footballer's got to be quite a stress and a strain. So I think he needs to be taken off the pitch for the other players' sake as well. I wouldn't want to be... I'm not a very good footballer, but I wouldn't want to be running around on the pitch fearing someone's teeth going into my arm.
Yes, gentleman down there.
In law, you've got precedent, and when the Merseyside police, even worse than the FA, turned around and went, there's no case to argue. If someone bites someone in the street then, surely they have the same right to turn around and go, didn't prosecute Luis Suarez, I am innocent too. This is, even worse than the FA, is what the police have done.
Okay. David, what do you make of it?
I think that a club like Liverpool should be about community, about hard work, about reputation, And I think it's a shame that we've got to a place where big football clubs put effectively money, and that's really what Luis Suarez represents, before a kind of decency that football used to be about. And in the end, I think the public are reacting against a group of people, and footballers are included in this, hugely privileged, lots of money, and somehow they're above the law when everybody else can't make racist statements and can't go around biting people.
Okay. What are people saying online, Tina?
Well, I know a couple of people in the audience are saying, hey, why are we talking about Suarez? But we put this on Radio 1's Newsbeat Facebook page today. It got a huge response, so people are talking about it. Pretty one-sided. Jamie said, I want to know why UK law doesn't apply to football pitches. Assault and racism need to be stopped. Adam, this one's just come in live. He agrees it should have been banned from the Premier League and they should be given the punishment we get. So again, if you bit somebody in the street, get the same punishment. And Brozif disagrees and says it's a ludicrous ban, seen a lot worse on a football pitch, who get a far shorter ban. He shows passion, unlike so many others. So it's about passion. Power bar update. Before we go back, Sarah, you have caught up with David. Neck and neck. Just over 5 minutes to decide who wins.
Saying that you want to bite David Cameron.
Yeah.
Finally, the death of Lady Thatcher provoked a huge response from young and old, with many conflicting opinions about her legacy. The free speech audience has had its say too. Here are a few thoughts just to start you off.
Strong-minded, dogmatic, strong, patriotic, decisive.
Short-sighted, miserly, hard.
Icon of Western liberalism. The Iron Lady.
Strong-ready, diplomatic.
Ruthless, ideological, reactionary.
Strong-willed, female.
You turn if you want to.
Merging left and right.
First female Prime Minister.
Shifted the political spectrum. Promoted liberty in the world.
Communities destroyed by unemployment. Lack of social housing.
Get rich quick.
The ladies not for turning.
Unlucky.
Lucky. Very lucky.
Does it really matter? It's happened.
Lucky. Neither. Her legacy remains.
We've got a question from Joshua. Joshua.
Was it right to celebrate the death of Thatcher?
OK, let's do yes, no. Going across. Raheem.
Celebrate the death of someone? No, that's never right. I think you can politically disagree with someone. David and I politically disagree on a lot of things, but I like to think that when either of us pass away, the other won't dance on the other's grave. I mean, it's just... It's terrible. I mean, what's happened with the death of Lady Thatcher is that you've had two very strong opinions come out on either side. But people aren't looking at the facts. People aren't looking at the facts, for instance, that the Labour government before her closed more mining pits than she did in 11 years. They closed more in 5 years. There are a lot of myths out there, and I implore people, before we make these, reactionary judgments, just go out there and read about it for yourselves. Read some things you don't necessarily think you'll agree with, and test yourself and see, did I know that about what she did? Did I know that she helped bring down communism, a murderous ideology? And see exactly what she stood for in the world. Please, no matter who it is, when Chavez died, a lot of people were celebrating. Don't celebrate someone's death.
Clear message from Raheem. David?
I think if you were growing up in an inner city area as I was, if you watched people lose their jobs, if you saw riots, if you were a miner, if you were fighting against apartheid, this is not a woman that you feel like you want to celebrate. I don't think you should celebrate someone's death, but you have to ask, who is the person that created a culture, an individualism, a consumerism, a materialism, a lack of decency? Where did that begin? It began in the 80s.
OK. Charlotte? Got to be quite quick here.
I like to Raheem say, don't let other people tell you what to think. Look at the facts. But let's remember, I wasn't born in the 70s. Rats, bodies uncollected, 3-day weeks, the lights going out. The winter of discontent was a bad place. By the end of 1990, when Thatcher left,
was responsible for that.
Absolutely rubbish. The mining community was not sustainable. It had already been closing. Thatcher was the one who switched off the life support machine. That's not to undermine the suffering that people underwent at that time, but it's a complex legacy.
OK, Sarah, quickly.
I think that I love that I live in a country where we're allowed to dissent, we're allowed to say that we disagree with people. It's made that everyone, and it being in the press so much, has made me read a lot more about what happened under Thatcher's government, but it's now that we're unhappy with, and I think we use all of that emotion and that community, it brings us together, whether we agree or disagree, and we now talk about what we do. That's what I think.
By a quick show of hands, actually, who feels like Thatcher had a positive legacy? And who thinks negative? interesting. Any specific thoughts?
I think with Thatcher, I think a lot of her what she did, she brought the country forward into a time that other places in the world had got to before us. We were looked at, we were looked down on, but we cannot forget a lot of the divisive things, the divisive politics that she stood for. And whilst a lot of the things would have happened anyway without her, and were good things, we cannot forget that millions and millions of people are unemployed, and she wasn't perfect, but she wasn't evil at the same time. You should never celebrate someone's death. It's disgusting.
So it's a complicated situation, basically. Tina, let's have a fun look at the power bar, please.
Power bar, which has been really interesting. Charlotte, you slipped ahead of David at one point in the Thatcher debate, now slipped back slightly. Overall, though, tonight, David, you are the winner. Congratulations. Overall, that means you get to have the final say. You've got 10, 15 seconds. No, that's on this debate. That's on this debate. So the average over the show, David won. So for this debate, it keeps changing. We've worked out the maths behind it. David is the winner. It's not a fix.
David, have your say.
David, finally.
Look, I think, as I said, that young people are getting a raw deal in this country. Unemployment, tuition fees, and the discussion we've had about the minimum wage. For those reasons, you've got to be politically engaged. I think you've got to stand up to the coalition government, and I think you've got to pressure my party to continue to do better, basically. This country needs a proper politics that addresses the issues of our time. We've been debating the 1980s. We're living with the legacy of the 1980s, but we need to move forward together, and I think this programme has demonstrated that.
That is almost it. Thanks very much to our audience, who are extremely lively this evening, our panel, and to you at home for sending in all of your comments. The debate will continue online every day of every week of every month of the year. Join us next time. We'll be live on May the 22nd at 8 o'clock. We're going to leave you, I told you they were lively, with some more thoughts on education from Suli Breaks.
This one is for my generation, the ones who found what they were looking for on Google, the ones who followed their dreams on Twitter, pictured their future on Instagram, accepted destiny on Facebook. This one's for my failures and my dropouts, for my unemployed graduates, my shop assistants, cleaners and cashiers with bigger dreams, my self-employed entrepreneurs, my world changers and my dream chasers, because the purpose of why I hate school but love education was not to initiate a worldwide debate, but to let them know that whether 72 or 88, 44 or 68, we will not let exam results decide our fate. Peace.